¿Qué tal? Buenas noches. Bienvenidos a Espiral. Uno de los economistas más interesantes por su discurso frente al neoliberalismo es el coreano Ha-Joon Chang, que estuvo en México recientemente dando una serie de conferencias, particularmente en el Senado. Tuvimos la suerte de poderlo entrevistar para Espiral, preguntarle de entrada qué es eso del neoliberalismo, que mire que ahora se usa con mucha laxitud el término. ¿Qué consecuencias ha tenido para las economías, para la nuestra? ¿Cómo enfrentar esas malas consecuencias? ¿Qué buenas decisiones se podrían tomar a partir del cambio de paradigma? ¿Con qué habría que tener cuidado? ¿Y qué habría de aprenderse de las experiencias internacionales? Entre ellas justamente la de Corea, que francamente su éxito se nos vuelve envidiable. Hoy dedicamos el programa entero a esta conferencia que nos entregó en Espiral a través de la entrevista con Ha-Joon Chang. Comenzamos. Pues es un regalo para Espiral tener al señor Ha-Joon Chang. Ha-Joon Chang, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having
I'm very
me.
happy, very glad to have you here. And let me ask you a very little question, very basic.
Yeah.
We are saying here in Mexico and maybe elsewhere that neoliberalism is dead. And now maybe it's a time to ask, what exactly is neoliberalism? Would you help me to give me a definition?
No, it's a very confusing notion because there's this old tradition coming from Europe called liberalism. Yeah, this is represented by people like Friedrich von Hayek. Yeah, and these are people who believe that the right to exercise your property right is the most important right, and giving the maximum freedom for exercising your property right is the best thing that the government can do. So this is a very old idea, which that calls for minimum government. These people are even against having a central bank. They are.
Let me stop you there. John Stuart Mill is as well a liberal.
Yeah.
How do you distinguish
Yeah, but
between...
the John Stuart Mill is once again slightly different because he was a liberal fundamentally, but he had also a bit of social conscience. Yeah.
Hayek.
Hayek. I mean, no, I'm not saying that he's got no social conscience, but his idea of good society is very narrow. Yeah? So it's a society where you have the dispersion of power through the kind of decentralized property ownership, and through those alternative power sources, you prevent tyranny. And for that reason, having strong protection of private property is the most important thing. This is why he was openly in support of General Pinochet in Chile. Yeah?
At the same time, during the 19th century, you have Darwinian ideas in the economy. The idea is the best good fit.
Yeah.
And the idea that freedom in markets and Darwinism would be close ideas.
That's right, yeah.
Would you put Hayek there too?
Yeah. Hayek had this idea of social evolution. Yeah? So he was against socialist planning on the ground that society has evolved for a long time. Yeah? No single mind can understand it. It's the product of a long process of evolution, and the evolutionary process has guaranteed that we have the best institutions that we can have. Yeah? So you shouldn't touch it. Trying to change that through socialism planning, this is a bad idea. Yeah?
You would say that the institutions are like animals. Just the best institutions survive.
Yeah, that's their view. Yeah, but of course all liberal ideas got totally discredited with the Great Depression and worldwide problem with capitalism, rise of the Soviet Union, the Second World War. So basically after the Second World War, we had this idea of the mixed economy.
Yeah.
So
Welfare
it's not
state.
exactly. It's not the total free market capitalism like the liberals used to support. It's not the socialism like what you have in the Soviet Union. It's a mixture of market and the state. And yeah, this idea was very widespread. I mean, it was called mixed economy in the advanced capitalist countries. In Latin America and other parts of the developing world, it was expressed as this idea of import substitution, industrialization. So instead of importing everything, we are now going to make what we are going to use. And in order to do that, we don't use Soviet planning, but we have the active role of the government in protecting and promoting our industries.
We use this mixed economy in Mexico and many countries. And it did work. I mean, during 30 years, we saw this rates of growth that were incredible.
Yeah, no, actually it did work very well in the beginning, between
the 50s, the 60s, the
right.
70s.
No, even before that, I mean, between 1930 and 82, annual growth of per capita income in Mexico was 2.7%, which is, of course, lower than what you had in countries like Japan or Korea, but which is very high. In the last 25 years since the NAFTA, Mexican per capita income grew at 0.8% per year.
But there is a shift in ideology.
Yeah.
But before that was a shift in the economic model. The welfare state broke, and the old policies didn't work during the 70s. So it's not just an ideological or faith change.
No,
it was something more complex.
That's
than
right.
that.
Yeah.
Will you help us to explain exactly what happened in the 70s? Then countries like Mexico, but many others, start changing these welfare state policies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, different countries had different types of problems. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to confine it more to developing countries like Mexico. So the problem with this old import substitution model was that it had a clear limit in the sense that it had no aspiration to make the Mexican economy internationally competitive. Yeah? So we close our borders, we develop our own way, and we live like that forever. Yeah? Unfortunately,
we were very happy at that time.
Yeah, but unfortunately, over time, your relative position declines because there are other countries like Korea, which came out, started with the lowest things. I mean, in the beginning, in the 1960s, we were putting together transistor radios, making T-shirts.
1959, 1960. If I'm not wrong, Korea was fourth of the Mexican economy.
Yes.
And today, Korea is one of the miracles, the economic miracles. What happened during the 60s if you compare Mexico and Korea?
That's right, yeah. So in 1961, Mexico's income, per capita income, was nearly 4 times that of South Korea's. Today, Korea's income is more than 3 times that of Mexican income. Mexican income is only 30% of Korean income.
We didn't see that coming.
That's right. So it's not as some people who follow this neoliberal idea, which is the updated version of that 19th century liberal idea. It's not as if South Korea pursued free trade, free market policy. No, it used a lot of protectionism. It had very strong government intervention, but the difference was that Korea, while using those means, used those protectionist policies to make one day Korean firms internationally competitive.
On the one hand, you did believe in freedom in markets. On the other hand, you use interventionist policies.
Yeah.
How does that work to do both things at the same time?
Actually, it's quite a simple idea to explain because
it's an opportunistic epistemology.
No, not just opportunistic. This is the same reason as why we send kids to school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid. Yeah. I mean, from today's point of view, it's much more efficient if you send the kid to work. Yeah. Yeah. He'll, I don't know, shine shoes, sell chewing gums, but he will earn money I don't have to spend money for his education. He'll support himself. Yeah? So it looks at very efficient to follow free market policy and let the kid work. But actually, in the long run, it's much better if you protect the kid and send the kid to school for another 10, 12 years, and then he can become a lot of things, the architect, nuclear physicist, accountant. Unfortunately, if you send the kid to work from the age of 5 or 6, what will he become? Yeah? He may become a shoeshine boy, and then maybe he'll own a small shop, but he can never become things like architect or nuclear physicist. Yeah? So that's the same idea. You need initial period of protection to establish new industries and allow it to improve itself. Yeah, exactly, greenhouse. Yeah, and then the trouble with the countries like Mexico is that they kept the plant in the greenhouse forever. Then it doesn't become a viable plant. Yeah?
There is an actor that is a main actor in this in this story. The parents have the state, and something that is impressive about South Korea is that you start building a strong state.
That's right. Yeah.
A strong bureaucracy, a professional bureaucracy, separated from the economic power. And we didn't get that during the 60s. We had that before that, but after, it was impressive. The crisis in the bureaucracy, the crisis of the state. Would you help me as well to do this comparison?
I mean, it's not as if South Korea started with a fantastic bureaucracy. That our bureaucracy was very inefficient.
Corrupt?
Yeah, corrupt. So actually in the 1960s, the World Bank used to give money to Korea to send these government officials to get trained in countries like Pakistan and the Philippines. Yeah, today it sounds unbelievable, but at the time, Pakistan was the golden boy of the World Bank. The World Bank thought Pakistan was going to be the best economy in Asia. The Philippines was the second richest economy in Asia after Japan. So, from at that time, it was obvious that we have to send people to Pakistan and the Philippines to get trained. Now, the thing about the Koreans was that, they didn't mind learning from other people. They knew that they were still behind. They wanted to learn from other people, the Americans, Germans, Japanese, Pakistanis, Filipinos, you name it. Yeah? So they spend a lot of energy and time to improve the quality of the government officials, to improve the organization of the bureaucracy, and they really built this incredible machinery that engineered the Korean economic miracle. What probably happened in many other developing countries was, there were countries like Mexico and to an extent Brazil, which had that quite impressive government machinery at some point. But then they got infected by kind of sectional interest, and then it kind of started declining in quality, and then it discredited the whole policy approach.
The thing that surprised me about Korean politics is how you managed to stabilize the same policies in the long run. Economic policies, the industrial policies. We, after the 70s, start changing everything.
That's right, yeah.
Even the people on charge.
Yeah. I think it's very important that you have this policy continuity. And this is not a matter of party politics,
State policies, not just
That's
parties.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You need this social consensus that everyone agrees. Yeah. Of course, different parties come to power, they change it a bit.
But there is a consensus, a basic
yeah.
consensus among parties.
That's right, yeah. So that, for example, in Scandinavia, you had this very strong consensus that you are going to have an open economy, which will subject a lot of companies and workers to external shocks, but then you build a good welfare state to support them in difficult times and retrain them and upgrade their skills and return them to the labor market. Yeah? That policy has been there at least since the 1930s, regardless of which party comes to power. Yeah? Similar consensus, of course, different type, but the similar kind of social consensus existed in East Asia, which is based on the belief that in order to develop our economy, we need to invest in machines, education, research, skills.
Technology,
Exactly, technology.
state of law.
Yeah. So that consensus is there. Of course, different parties, once again, use different tools.
Was Japanese success an example for South Korea and other countries?
Yeah, that was very much the case.
You were following
Yeah, of course.
a path that was
Yeah,
successful.
we have a love-hate relationship with the Japanese. That they were our colonizers for 35 years. At one level, we hate them.
Let
but
me stop you here.
Yeah.
We go to a pause and we come back. Thank you very much. Seguimos en Espiral, no se vaya. Continuamos con el profesor Ha-Joon Chang. Thank you very much for being here. And we're talking about these friend enemies, Japan and Korea.
That's right.
It's similar models at the end, distinguished.
Yeah. Well, Korea was a completely closed country, and we were forced open by
The war?
No, by the Japanese in 1876. We were forced into the kind of subservient relationship, and in the end, they annexed the country to their country in 1910. Yeah? So between 1910 and 45, we were a Japanese colony. And because of that history, we got a lot of modern institutions, modern technologies through Japan, which itself was very much influenced by Germany, especially Prussia. Yeah?
Okay.
So that we had this policy tradition, forms of institutions that were very much geared towards economic development. Yeah? And yeah, we benefited from having that. But I think also that the fact that we wanted to prove ourselves against the Japanese, that I think motivated us also. So Japan partly served as a role model, but also served as a kind of imaginary competitor. Yeah? In the beginning, there was no competition, but we always wanted to compete with Japan. Yeah?
During the 40s, even during the 50s, Japan and Korea too, there were small number of families owning the means of production.
That's right. Yeah.
How did you in Korea move from that? I mean, diversify, democratize the economy. Does that happen?
Yeah. Well, in the Japanese case, they had this 6 jaibatsus. I mean, 6 powerful families owning huge range of businesses. When Japan lost the Second World War, the American occupation army came in and disbanded these groups. So this family ownership disappeared, even though the business groups that re-emerged.
Sony, for example, is one
Yeah,
of
exactly. Yeah, but very few of these were family groups. Yeah? In the Korean case, we didn't have those traditional families, but from the 60s and 70s, the government really concentrated its support to some of the most successful firms. And they became very strong family business groups. So Samsung, LG, Hyundai, they all have very strong family control. However, when your society kind of industrialized, when 90% of the people go to university, when the society
these oligarchies.
That's right. That needs to be open in order to have innovation and so on. People challenge these authorities. So, yeah, these families are still powerful, but not as powerful as before. And I think family ownership itself is not such an important issue because that, unbeknownst to most people, the country with the most concentrated family ownership of business is Sweden. Yeah, Sweden is one of the most equal countries in terms of income distribution. But they have one family called the Wallenberg family, which basically owns half of the Swedish business sector. But it is willing to work with other elements in the society.
We have the rates that are similar, but I won't go there.
Yeah, but the important thing is that these people have bought into the democratic agenda. They have accepted that they are going to, they don't have big personal fortunes. Yeah? Their family foundation is huge. Yeah? but individually they maybe $50 million, $100 million at most. Yeah.
Industrialization is a magic word. I mean, you in South Korea decided to industrialize the country, to bring policies that were successful from the technological point of view, from the human resources.
Yeah.
Could you say just in a word,
Yeah.
what make these policies?
Yes.
Did make these policies?
Yeah, no, the thing about industrialization, that is the development of the manufacturing sector, is that it is the sector that is most technologically dynamic. You know? So it is a sector that is more open to mechanization, use of chemical processes, and you can increase productivity hugely. Yeah?
More than agriculture,
Yeah,
more
agriculture,
than
services. You know, agriculture is bound by time. You know, services. You know, in some services, actually raising productivity will destroy the product. You know, if there's a 27-minute string quartet piece and you play it in 9 minutes, at one level it's yeah, that's right, 3 times increase in productivity, but at another level you have destroyed the product. Yeah?
And if you go to a restaurant, you don't want to eat
Exactly, yeah.
You want a good
Exactly, yeah.
plate.
And yeah, also the manufacturing is that because of this where most research and development is conducted. Yeah. So even in countries like the UK and the US, where manufacturing sector is only now about 10% of GDP, 70% of research and development is done in the manufacturing sector. Yeah? In countries like Germany, Japan, Korea, it's 80-90%. And so that's actually the sector that generates knowledge. Yeah? And then it produces inputs that other sectors use. Yeah? Agricultural sector buys chemicals, agricultural machinery to improve productivity in agriculture. The service sector buys computers, trucks, servers to increase their productivity. So it's, basically we live in a world like we are living in today, exactly because manufacturing sector, starting in the 18th century, Europe developed.
But you didn't lie to yourself. I mean, you don't leave the market to resolve the industrial policy. Here in Mexico, we used to say that the market was in charge of industrial policies. You, on the contrary, linked banking, development, human resources, and the state in the middle of these policies. How did you manage to avoid the free market as policy maker?
Yes, I mean, market is, of course, one of the most powerful institutions that the humanity has invented. Yeah? But it's not perfect. There are things that it cannot do. Yeah? I mean, there are things that requires extra intervention.
Institutions.
That's right.
Politics.
Exactly. Yeah. Because this is widely accepted even among relatively pro-market economies. There are things that markets are not very good at supplying, like infrastructure, research and development. Yeah? Skills training for the workers, and on top of that, people like I have developed all these theories explaining how industrialization requires sometimes very sector-specific sector-specific interventions. Yeah, so what you have to do to, for example, develop electronics industry is actually very different from what you have to do to develop agro-processing. Yeah? What you have to do in order to promote the auto industry is very different from what you have to do to develop the software industry.
How to know what kind of intervention is needed and how to avoid that interest within these industries say that this is what they need, the market need or the industry need. I mean, because it's different.
Sure, well, first of all, you have to decide what you want to do. Yeah? I mean, which industry do you want to support? Yeah? And then, there are lots of theories, lots of kind of historical experiences that will suggest that in order to develop this kind of industry, you need to do these kind of things. Yeah? Up to that part is relatively easy. Yeah?
Okay.
I mean, there's that great source of information. The difficult part is how to manage this process, as you just said, that how to kind of prevent it from being hijacked by sectional interests. Yeah? how to prevent corruption. Yeah? And I would say actually it helps if you have more explicit policy. Yeah? Because what often happens is that
screening the policy. What you say? Like explicit.
No, explicit in the sense that you clearly announce the target and the performance standard. Yeah.
That we are
going to support this
and
industry.
This is a state thing. This is a
Exactly. Yeah.
thing.
For the next say 15 years. Yeah. In the first 5 years, we give a lot of support, and we'll review the performance. And if it's doing badly, we might close it down. Yeah?
So, but you are able to say we're gonna pursue or follow this policy during 10 years, and you know that the next government gonna follow it too?
No, that's why you need this social consensus. Yeah.
Okay.
Because unless you have that social consensus, yes, of course, that next government might want to support
This is a bad thing,
yeah, agriculture rather than manufacturing. Yeah.
It was a
might,
corrupt
exactly, yeah.
politician.
But what happens very often is that the government pretends that it doesn't have any industrial policy. Yeah? And then it starts giving support here and there, and no one knows exactly what it is doing. No one knows how well these policies are working. And then later it is going to go bankrupt, and then the government has to put in taxpayers' money. You know, this is what happened with the U.S. auto industry. Yeah?
You were talking about this South Korean consensus. But at the same time you were being successful, it was born the Washington consensus. And you have written a lot about it. Could you explain us what was the Washington consensus and why it was so ingenious, or how to call it?
Yes, Washington.
Childish.
Yeah. Washington in Washington consensus refers to Washington D.C.
Yeah.
And it's called Washington consensus because the three most powerful economic institutions in the world, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the U.S. Treasury, all agreed on this set of policies that they thought were going to solve all the economic problems. Yeah, so this
Hayekian policies.
Yeah, I mean the Washington consensus is a bit more the permissive of government intervention than Hayekian policies. I mean, Hayek is very extreme. Yeah, so the Washington consensus, basically was built on this idea that the best thing that the government can do is to stabilize the macroeconomy, but the stabilization defined in a very narrow way as low inflation. Yeah? There's no mention of output, growth, employment. Yeah? It also is based on this idea that the more open your border is, the better it is. So free trade, welcoming of foreign investment. Yeah? It is also based on this idea of the best industrial policy being basically the government getting out of the way of the business. Yeah? So the World Bank has this index called Doing Business Index. Yeah? So measuring basically how easy it is to do business. Yeah? How long does it take to open a new business? How many permits do you need to open the business? How many regulations do you have to meet in order to do certain things? So the idea is that to see the government main as an obstacle to business. But I think that is the biggest problem actually with neoliberal policies, because when you look at successful economies, it is always that it was not just the market, not just the state, it was a combination of the two. And truly pro-business the policy means not just cutting red tape and reducing unnecessary regulation, but also providing support that the private sector can supply itself very easily, like infrastructure, research and development, skills, sometimes sectoral interventions. So actually my main problem with the neoliberal policy or the Washington consensus policy is it's not pro-business enough.
At that time, Peter Drucker published a book, or name, I don't remember exactly, but the idea was that small was beautiful. He was talking about business.
Yes.
But in reality, neoliberalism to start thinking that small was beautiful, talking about the government.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean,
And small not just in the industrial policy, but almost in everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
I mean, security.
That's right. Yeah, so the idea is that the smaller the government is, the better. The lower the taxes, the better. But we have to see this in a different way. That when people argue that we have to have lower taxes, I often ask them, then why doesn't every business relocate to Paraguay? Yeah? No, their corporate income tax rate is only 10%. Yeah? Why don't all rich people move to Paraguay? Because their top income tax rate is 10%. Yeah? I mean, according to that logic, that there should be no business left in Germany because corporation income taxes are nearly 30%. Yeah? The point is that the tax that you pay, is that the value is judged has to be judged with reference to the service you get. Yeah? Because tax is not something that the government takes away and burns somewhere. Yeah? It's a price that you pay for the government service. Yeah?
It was just not taxes. It was as well the idea that private was beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
private was better, even to own jails or
yeah, that's right. Yeah, jail,
education
hospital,
or health.
Yeah.
I mean, this idea. Could you say that is over? I mean, the whole idea, the whole Washington consensus.
Well, I wouldn't say it's over. I mean, there are still people who believe in that.
Let me stop here and we go and come back. Estamos de vuelta con el profesor sudcoreano Ha-Joon Chang. Thank you very much for being here. And we're talking about the end of neoliberalism. So we saw the end of the welfare state during the 70s. We don't know if something lasted still about the welfare state. But now we're talking about the end of the next model, this model that was born from the Washington consensus. Do you believe in that?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a bit. I think it's a bit premature to talk about the end because there are still a lot of people who believe in the neoliberal ideas, who still believe in Washington consensus policies. But yeah, one thing that is clear is that it has lost the authority that it used to have in the 1980s and 90s. Yeah? I mean, with the global financial crisis of 2008, with the rise of China, with the emergence of new technologies, a lot of governments now recognize that the government has to play a more explicit and active role in the economy. And yeah, I mean, it's happening everywhere, the US, Germany, Japan.
But at the same time, austerity is still very important.
Yes, I mean, that,
believe. And I would like you to develop about this concept. Austerity in government.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's a rather simplistic idea because sometimes you need austerity, sometimes you don't. I mean, basically the thing about government budget is that it has to work as a kind of shock absorber for the rest of the economy. So if the rest of the economy is too kind of overheated, actually the government has to engage in austerity to take the heat out of the system, otherwise it might explode. Yeah? If the rest of the economy is anemic, it has to kind of spend a lot of money to revive it. Yeah? The problem is that these days we are doing austerity right in the middle of a recession, which makes it even worse. Yeah?
It's like doing that.
That's right, yeah. Because what people have to understand is that you cannot understand government finance in the same way that you understand personal finance. Yeah? Okay. For personal finance, if you cannot spend more than what you earn. Yeah? Because otherwise you'll go bankrupt. Yeah?
Well, you're a government, you
but as a government, you're in a unique position because the rest of the economy can be, I mean, in the good sense, manipulated by you. Yeah?
If corruption is huge, austerity is a good solution?
No, but people who steal money will steal it whatever happens. Yeah, austerity, spending boom. Yeah, they'll find a way to steal money. I mean,
so
it's a separate.
It's not a good thing to it.
No, I mean actually it might make things even worse because if you have an austerity, if these people steal money, it's going to be even worse. Yeah? So I think you have to separate these two issues. Yeah? Austerity or not is a matter of managing macroeconomic cycle. Corruption is a different thing. Yeah? I mean, you have to eradicate it per se. Yeah?
Neoliberalism was the cause, it's evident, of slow rate of growth and overall inequality.
That's right. Yeah.
What do we have? Countries like Mexico, with a very slow rate of growth,
Yeah.
and a huge inequality and a growing inequality, to fight these things at the same time that we are becoming the 8th or the 9th economy in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not an easy.
That's right. No, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that, okay, I mean, maybe there are people who are happy with what happened in the country in the last few years, few decades, but, the country has...
Very few people.
That's right. The
happy.
country has not realized its potential, In the early 60s, Mexico was the third most industrialized country outside the core capitalist bloc of the US, Europe, and Japan. Yeah? I mean, only South Africa and Argentina produced more manufacturing output per capita than Mexico did. Yeah? You are producing nearly twice more manufacturing output on per capita basis than Brazil. You're producing kind of nearly 4 times manufacturing output than that of Korea's or Taiwan's. Yeah? So you had this very strong industrial base.
What happened?
Well, I think what happened is that, yes, I mean, I accept that your model was kind of running out of steam and getting stale in the 1970s and 80s. But when the debt crisis happened, you try to kind of change it too radically. Yeah?
But if we want to catch up the track today, 21st century, what would be your advice or your recommendation?
Yeah, well, you need to, in short, you need to revive and upgrade your manufacturing sector. Yeah? Okay, I mean, your manufacturing sector has
our export center is not bad. Huh? It's a good machine.
Yeah, exactly. But the operative word is in upgrade. Yeah, because what you are doing is now just putting together things that foreign companies give you. Yeah?
Is not
maquila. Yeah,
our own industry.
That's right. Yeah. No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with maquila. South Korea is one of the original maquila countries. Yeah, we are making T-shirts, we are assembling transistor
But you're
radios.
not just doing maquila.
Exactly. What you have to do is to use the resource that you earn from maquila industry, to use the managerial skills and worker skills that you gain from the experience, to you have to use the technologies that you gain from there to develop your own the capabilities.
What are the keys? Research and development, education, rule of law. What would be the 3 main things that we have to do in the next 6 years?
Well, first you have to increase your investment. Yeah, I mean, seriously.
National and international.
National, yeah. You are investing only 22% of GDP.
How much are you investing in South Korea?
Oh, South Korea is close to 30%, but we are, much more mature economy. So, we don't even need to invest that much. Yeah? But China is investing 40%, 45%.
And we're investing
Yeah, no,
30%.
I don't want to give any exact figure, but as far as I know, no country has had serious economic growth
in any sector. Or in the industry?
No.
We are thinking maybe energy is a good thing to invest, or maybe export sector, or maybe agriculture.
Yeah, exactly. Where you invest will have to be discussed and worked out between main stakeholders, government, the private sector, the unions, and so on, and the scientists, and so on. But so I'm not going to tell you where to invest, yeah?
Oh.
But what is clear is that you have to make a focused effort, yeah? Because it's no good if your government is trying to promote, agro-processing and
Or
the private,
tourism,
yeah, the private sector wants to develop electronics industry while universities are producing chemical engineers. Yeah,
We don't have the consensus like the one you were talking about.
yeah, you have to make it. Yeah.
We don't have this consensus. We don't have even a table to produce this consensus.
No, yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that one thing that you might have to start is to have some kind of national council to create the long-term vision for the economy. Yeah? No, because somehow in the neoliberal times, this word planning has become a dirty word.
Yeah.
But that's wrong, because when you look at successful countries, when you look at successful businesses, they plan all the time. Yeah.
In the long run.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it. When if a new CEO arrives in a major company and tells people, "Oh, I'm a great believer in market. I'm not going to have any plan." Yeah. You just react to market prices on a daily basis. Yeah.
Why should you pay? We pay you.
Exactly. Yeah. So government has to do the same. Yeah. It has to have a plan. You cannot. I mean, of course, there are things that it shouldn't do, but you cannot just say that whatever happens will happen. It needs to create this vision. Of course, it has to come from the careful study and debate. But
we learned during the 90s how to create a consensus in Mexico. Signing international treaties. Light outside help to light inside.
Yes.
I mean the NAFTA was the way to build
that's
a consensus.
one way to do it, but you paid also quite high price to have that. Yeah.
Because it's a bigger consensus.
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
we don't need.
So now you have to find a way to create consensus with internal political dynamics. Yeah.
Do you see this new NAFTA, this TEMEC, being a way to change things, to have the shift that we are looking for?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, the sum total of these changes is difficult to work out, because it's going to affect different sectors differently. But one thing that is clear is that you got what you could from NAFTA. Yeah, you got
no more, no less.
That's right. Access to the North American market that boosted certain sectors like automobile, but you need the next step. Yeah. I mean, the reason why your economy has been stagnating is because
we don't have the next step.
Exactly, yeah. You don't even know where to go next, yeah?
Oh.
So now you are totally subject to the decisions by the American corporations, Korean corporations, Japanese corporations, yeah? If they decide, okay, the next year we are going to move to Vietnam,
Would you say that there is a kind of economic sovereignty that we don't have and you do?
Oh, yeah, that sovereignty is what you create, no? Because
in
Korea,
a global world, does that exist?
Sorry?
In a global world, does that exist? Economic
Oh,
sovereignty?
yeah. No, I mean, of course it does exist. Different countries are subject to the same kind of shocks, and they have very different outcomes, yeah? So, for example, when it comes to inequality, a lot of people say, the rising inequality is inevitable because it's because of technological change, globalization. But if that's the case, how come inequality hasn't risen very much in Canada and the Netherlands? How come inequality has actually fallen in countries like France and Switzerland? Yeah?
So we need to focus on this kind of sovereignty.
Yeah, that's right. You need to create your own sovereignty. Of course, there's a limit,
No.
Yeah, especially as a
margin.
That's right. Developing country, like Mexico, you have clear limit. You also have signed the NAFTA, so it restricts your sovereignty a lot. But on the other hand, it's not as if there is nothing you can do. Okay. I mean, your destiny is what you make.
Let me go bigger in our Zoom and talk about this trade war between the States and China. And I would be very interested to know how you from Korea are looking at this war is coming, and how do you see Mexico living this trade war?
Yes, well, to begin with, I think that this so-called trade war is not really about trade, because it's about global hegemony. Yeah?
Okay. It's about global hegemony.
Yeah, so basically the Americans want to prevent China from challenging it. Yeah, I mean, it's that become very strong, but not quite there yet. So their thinking is we have to repress it now, unless it becomes even bigger and 10, 20 years later challenges. Yeah. So actually, these tariffs, they sound huge, like hundreds of billions of dollars, but in the bigger scheme of things, they are not that significant. The annual trade of China is something like 2.2 trillion. Yeah? So even if there's that 250 billion tariff, it's still only about 1%. Yeah? So you have to put this into perspective. But yeah, I mean, having said that, this is going to affect.
Are we going to be forced to be part of a regional bloc? I mean, this is your case with China or case in Mexico to the US.
Ooh.
Or talking about this margin that we have to.
No,
to
these are
move
tricky
or
things. I mean, for example, Mexico signed up to TPP. Yeah? South Korea didn't because the TPP deliberately excluded China. I mean, how can you talk about pan-Pacific trade without China? Yeah? So this is a deliberate
they
attempt
have
by
a small cost.
That's right.
To the Pacific.
Americans. That's right. Americans and the Japanese to exclude China. Korea, being #1 trading partner with China, was not very happy with being part of that game. Yeah? So they didn't join the TPP, despite the fact that it has a free trade agreement with the US and many other countries. Yeah? So this is not just economics, it's geopolitics. And yeah, it won't be easy for countries like Mexico to navigate this. I mean, my prediction is that in some areas you will gain because in some things, export from China diminishes. You can export more to the US. That's right. More US firms might relocate to Mexico away from China. Yeah, but on the other hand, in the long run, this actually might give impetus to China to upgrade this the economy because now they are going to relocate this at the final stage assembly to countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, and so on. And then they do even better things. Yeah. So in certain areas, actually, China will become even more formidable. Yeah?
The very last question, investment from South Korea in Mexico is growing. We are good friends, good partners. Do you see this path growing?
Yes, actually the one thing about Korean companies is, we still have this living memory when we were the lowest macular producers.
2 generations ago.
Exactly.
It was your parents'
international companies. That's right. Yeah. Even when I was young, yours, I mean, a lot of people of my age were working in these macular factories. Yeah. So we know how sad it is to be a country which has to rely on the foreign companies.
And you know the courage to go out from that.
Exactly. So, actually the Koreans are, I mean, of course there's a limit, but Koreans are a bit more open to transferring technology and helping you develop your productive capabilities than American or European companies. Yeah? So make the most of it. And yeah, I mean, Koreans love Mexico, you are the country that gave us chili, we are addicted to chili, And yeah, I mean we both are very warm people, so I think you should try to increase your partnership.
After hearing you, I know about your generosity. It's cultural. Chang, thank you very much, Professor. It was a pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure.
In Espiral. Nos vamos próximo jueves, 11 de la noche. Esto es Espiral. Gracias por habernos permitido entrar a su hogar con esta interesantísima conversación.